Hi, Great Life Design Masterminders. I'm here today with Carmen Spagnola. She's a great friend of mine and a teacher, and I'm actually always a little nervous when I'm sitting next to her because she takes me to the medicine pretty quickly. Carmen is a intuitive. She takes people on journeys to work their shit out, is what I would say, to find their purpose, find their passion, and figure out what they're meant to do in this world. And she's been a part of my journey, and I wanted to share her with you and see what'll just come out of this conversation. We're just gonna riff, like literally, we haven't planned anything. We're just gonna go for it today. But I really actually want to dive into some of the stuff she's been doing. So it's almost gonna be a bit of a personal conversation because I want to know how this journey just went that she went on. Hi, Carmen.
Hi.
So good to see you today.
Yes, and you. Thanks. I totally did think that we were just having coffee in my backyard.
Oh, really?
That's why I'm wearing my gardening dress. That's okay.
That's okay. We're just going to let everybody in on the kind of conversations we have then.
Sure.
And I love that idea. So I want to hear, you just went on a big journey.
Mm-hmm.
And you took other people on that journey with them. And I'd love to hear about it.
So I led my first wilderness quest. I've been going on quests for 10 years and apprenticing for a couple years. And I did the work to become a licensed wilderness guide and like leading pack horse trips. And then I went and apprenticed with my teacher who leads vision quests to become a guide. And so, yeah, I guess a year and a half ago, I completed a quest to determine whether I was ready to leave. And through some ritual work, that became clear. So then, yeah, I just led my first group, and it was fucking phenomenal. And they have emerged. So, I mean, they actually had a tougher quest than I've ever had. And I had gone through 17 years of historical weather data, and there'd never been more than 0.01 millimeter of precipitation on May 1st, and it fucking snowed 3 out of 4 of the days they were on their quest, on their solo. So the solo part is where they're fasting and have a sleeping bag and a tarp and like first aid equipment, all that stuff. But
and they're alone? You're not even with them?
I'm at base camp.
Okay.
And everybody hikes out to find their spot. And we do have a stone pile system. It's like a communication system. Somebody visits the stone pile in the morning and your buddy goes in the afternoon, and you kind of have a little system of symbols to say like,
I just write help, come get me.
Yeah. You know what? They all stayed out the whole time. And one of the women had like never even been camping before. She grew up in Singapore. So like you can only imagine how triumphant you feel after accomplishing that. So I stay at base camp and do morning and evening prayers and hold vigil, but I'm also there in case something goes wrong or poorly and they need help. But they all stayed out. So we have 4 days of preparation. So they're learning about the kind of healing work or rituals that they might want to do while they're on their solo. And then they do their solo. And then when we come back, we have 4 days of circle and mirror process and some more ceremony. So, you know, I was worried about them.
Yeah.
Those 4 days. But on day 2 of the initial preparation phase, at 2:38 in the morning, I woke up and their group name had come to me, and it was the ones who discover what is possible. So at first I was super excited. And then suddenly I was like kind of agitated because I was like, well, what are they going to find out? Like,
what kind of medicine is going to
possible? Exactly. But they actually all had really beautiful magic happen for them out there, even in the toughest of circumstances. And the elder who did the territorial welcoming for us in the beginning, he also did blessings for them and answered a lot of questions, spent about a half day. He called me at the end. He was like, Carmen, can you call Norman Retaskett, please? And he sounded like quite worried. And I was like, oh no. And he said, you know, I've been watching the weather every day. How did they do? I said, they all stayed out, Norman. And he was like, wow, what an amazing group of humans. I was like, I know. So I'm very proud of them because they each really exemplified kind of a different season. Like in the teaching that we do in the beginning, I'm talking about 4 seasons of human development and what lessons we're learning in our personal summers, falls, springs, and winters. And we cycle through that again and again in our lives. And it was just amazing how this first group, each of them kind of exemplified being in one season and needing to move through the cycle of the next one. And all of them tend to be people who like make things hard. You know, like if it isn't hard, then it doesn't count.
Gotta hustle for it.
Gotta hustle, gotta earn it.
Mm.
And I really felt like spring was having to show that it was earning itself, because winter would not fucking let go, which was like perfect mirror for these people. Yeah, it was awesome. It was really good.
So it's so funny. I'm listening to you going, oh, this all sounds like stuff that I'm needing. There's no accident. I'm sitting here with you.
Yeah.
And so on that top, what was hard? Tell me about their darkness.
You know, in each case, yeah, I recorded a podcast on this because they all talked about how it was none of the things that people think it's going to be, right? Like they thought it would be the dark. They thought it would be the cold. They thought it would be the hunger. They thought it would be the animals. In none of those cases was that it. It's it's just the growing pains of knowing that you're being called and the worry that you're not up for the task. And so remembering that like this is a natural process and you can do this. I mean, it's like any kind of mystery. You don't know what kind of person you're going to be on the other side. So there's a reason we have a healthy fear of death. It's the great mystery. So going out to the mountain is dying to your old way of being. And so the mystery of that is who the fuck is going to come back, right? And like, will my partner still want that person? Will I still be able to parent my children? Will my work still support me and nourish me? Yeah, right? So it's like there's a natural human bias towards self-preservation. And we can see in our world how problematic that is for all sorts of systems and our natural impulse towards collective concern and care, right? Because we have this impulse also that's in tension with that towards self-preservation. But if we don't let go and allow ourselves to move through the cycles of death and rebirth, then A, nothing changes. We can see what that does. But B, we calcify, we harden, those muscles atrophy. And so we actually are left even more vulnerable when there's bigger changes that are, outside of our control. So it's sort of like winter can fucking put up as much stink as it wants, but it's going to be spring eventually. And so how are you going to do spring? Because if you miss it, if you miss spring, you will not have lush crops in summer and you will have nothing to harvest in fall. So the very thing that you were trying to avoid, it's going to come back around. You know what I mean? So this is, so their darkness was really about release, I suppose, surrender to what wants to come and trying to befriend the other, open to the other, open to the mystery, befriend it rather than resist it. That,
moving towards the pain, moving towards the darkness.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know what? Oh my God, in a couple of cases, it isn't darkness. It's just it's like, I wish I could, I don't have permission to share his words, but one of the participants, who's a pretty armored individual and like physically presents that way, and also is like holds the cards close to the chest, had like the most amazing opening. And one of the phrases he uses was he said he could feel like muscles exploding in his chest around his heart, right? And it's just like, oh my God. Right, yeah, right? It's just like, hold on, it's coming. And so, of course, the two things that come up for every human are, I'm not ready and I'm not worthy, right? And so the only thing you can do in that case is respond with like, do I feel safe and do I feel enough? And so if I am physically safe, actually, I've come out here and I've found my place in the family of things, as Mary Oliver would say, and I've remembered how to be part of an ecosystem. Actually, I am human, but I am an animal. I actually am safe here. And I do have enough. I'm nourished by spirit. I'm warm in my sleeping bag. I know how to, in their case, make fire. Like we train them, we prepare them, we help them remember And if like, so memory comes from membus in Latin, it means the limb, right? So to remember is to like bring it into the body and make ourselves whole again. So the very first step, I mean, the reason we go to the wilderness is because when you remember yourself and you come back into the family of things and you open up to nature and open up to the other, you remember a very primal part of yourself that is like, oh, right, I know how to make myself safe in the world. That's like a precursor to healing, is to know how to make yourself safe in the natural world. You can, everybody can, even the Singapore Canuck gal who, you know, like, so, I mean, it's not always dark, you know.
I wanted to ask if it could be done at a 5-star hotel, but I guess the answer is no.
I've done, you know, I used to do the 5-day retreats and like big emphasis on cocktail hour and all that kind of stuff, but it's just a little too sanitary, right? And like, I know that at some point you're going to ask me what makes me, what was it, righteously angry?
Yeah, I'll ask it right now. What makes you righteously indignant?
Righteously indignant is the very human-centered demand for comfort. Like, fuck you and your need for comfort. That is not an inalienable right, and that is not what life is about. It's about you remembering your place. And actually, not everything in nature wishes you well, and it's important for you to know that, and fucking step up and be part of this, right? So I actually get kind of righteously, I love fine food, cocktail, you know, like nice things, Swiss design, Swedish design. I mean, but I can also just be nourished on spirit for days and not eat and not sleep and those things too, because that's what's real to me. And so when you sacrifice food and companionship and shelter and all those things, what you're saying is, spirit, thank you for all those things, but just so we're clear, I can be nourished on you and I can come to you and give something. I can give up things and show you that I want to be in relationship with you, intimate relationship, not mediated by plant medicine or mediated by yoga or music or whatever, just you, me. You're moving towards me, I'm moving towards you. I renounce all other things and I am just here focused on you. So that doesn't actually take superhuman strength. That doesn't take that. That just takes a kind of nurturance and a kind of love that is adult, that is mature, that is willing to say, there's a time and place for those things. But at this point in my spiritual life, I've been given quite a lot. And it's time for me to say, I receive that and I'm here to serve. And so, yeah, I do have compassion for all the fears. I understand that people have that around how will I fast, or I have chronic pain, or I have those things. I'm not saying it that can't be site specific.
Yeah.
But I am also saying that fucking bullshit. Don't be a wimp.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we live in the West anyway, in a hyper individualistic culture that's lost the impulse towards the collective and collective care and concern for each other. And so where that becomes unhealthy, we can see it in the demand for comfort, even in the demand for safe space. I understand that positionality matters, intersections matter, all of that. And we've got a lot of focus on that in spiritual space. And that's the via creativa. Everybody gets to express, everybody gets to fully dance with spirit and be themselves and all of that. That's great. But there's also the via negativa. And I think both are required on our spiritual path. And the via negativa says, and I can lay down all of my concerns about me and just be here listening and waiting for that of God within me to express. And so I can lay that all down as well and empty myself. In many traditional cultures, they'd say, you know, empty out like a hollow bone, like the shaman would do, or beginner mind in several Eastern practices, you know. So I think we need to develop that muscle in Western culture for getting better at just like, have your needs, but don't put them on the altar.
I love that.
Yeah.
So what does go on the altar?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, we live in the West in a culture that puts the individual at the center. And so if I were putting things on the altar, I'd be looking more at relationships, ecosystems, soul group dynamics, circling, completing our karmic debt with each other, showing up to do that work. That's what I would put on the altar. And so that's why I lean into discomfort. I fucking hate community, but but I do it, because I recognize that that's the work.
You taught me a word a couple years ago. That word about showing up for community. What is that word? It's a Japanese word.
Oh, giri. Yeah. So at our house we do giri, which in Japan. My husband lived in Japan for a couple of years. And so like if somebody new moves into the neighborhood, you would like take them a present or tell them where the best restaurants are, whatever. Okay. It's like this neighborly, honorable obligation you would do.
Yes.
To say like, we're proud of our neighborhood. We're happy you're here. Let me help take care of you. And so there are a lot of times where like, I don't want to go to somebody's talk or, like maybe I'll have a healing practitioner come to me as a client and I'm kind of like, well, I'm not really like into what you're doing, but I'll say to my husband, he's like, where are you going tonight? I'm like, I'm doing giri, which is I'm showing up for you because you're a member of my community. And so I feel like this is a form of care of the collective. It's not just about me, and it's like I need to show up and show you that I see you. I need to show up and show you I hear you.
We had a little pause there, so we're just going to get back into things. Okay, how's this one? What are your three? You probably have lots, but what are your three non-negotiables?
In which context?
Any context. For example, like I interviewed an author and she talked about like she always thinks of books, so she's like place is important. Where's the setting? That kind of thing. And then I've interviewed other people who talk about their health or I'll talk about mine. So 3 non-negotiables, 1 family.
Okay.
That my kid, my husband, all decisions need to be measured in the realm of how will this affect them and how can I still stay in congruency with them, still stay true to myself. Super non-negotiable to family. When I need to, as far as health, I need movement. I need to be in nature at least every day. I could never live in a big city. I have to, so place is another way to put it, or like I need to be breathing and moving in nature. So I live in the country where I'm able to go for a hike every day. And just so meditation and motion, do that. Those are 2 are super important to me, and then I've got a long list after that.
Okay, well, I think I see where you're going.
Yes.
Okay. So like number 1 is spirit. I serve spirit. I want to live in spirit, and that's who I work for. So that's just, if you want to live Carmen Spagnola, you live in spirit, and that's who's running the show. And it's just something, it just takes care of itself. I don't really work at it. That's just the cosmology here.
Yep.
Spirit speaks and I just do it and I don't question it. I guess the second thing I was gonna say, something about like I do have a strong desire to be appropriate with spiritual practice and teaching, in the sense that like here's an example. I get asked a lot, do you do sweat lodges? Have you ever been to a sweat? Do you offer sweat before your quests? And I'm a 5th generation settler of Scottish descent. So if I get into a hot place with white people, I call that a sauna. I'm not like,
Yes.
So I don't want to be hyper vigilant about censoring how we do spirit together, but I do want to be really respectful. And so not being appropriative, and I don't even know all the ways in which I'm appropriative, but trying to dismantle the perpetuation of whiteness and that kind of shit in the spiritual scene, that is becoming really non-negotiable for me. So there's just, there's a lot of teachers and marketing material and promotional bullshit that it's becoming a very aversive experience for me. So it's like, I just can't do those things anymore. And also I can't attend them because it looks like I endorse them, and I can't, so there are more and more non-negotiables for me when it comes to navigating personal spirituality with an awareness of the harm that can come to other people and cultures that are alive and cultures that are trying to be resuscitated and reclaimed, when I just kind of parachute in and take what I like. So that's that, being able to sit in the discomfort of that is kind of the non-negotiable piece there for me. I also have a non-negotiable around like food and how we live. My husband's blog is called smallanddeliciouslife.com, and that's really kind of like a philosophy that we have around local eating. Our dear friends literally wrote the book The 100-Mile Diet and lived that experiment for years, and so we also live that way, pretty seasonally and locally, and we try to grow a lot of our own food. And so when I'm doing Quest, I'm also preparing all of the meals for people, because I know that we need to be very well resourced physically if we're going to do that kind of emotional work and spiritual work out there. And so that, as an expression of my care, not only for my family, but also for the land and for the animals. We eat meat, and we try to eat happy meat exclusively, and started raising rabbits that we slaughter for meat. And not because I'm like taking that lightly, but because that's spiritual work. I always had this kind of cliche notion that like, if you wouldn't personally kill it, you probably shouldn't eat it. But I'd never actually done that until a few years ago. And so now, having taken life and still not comfortable with that, it's such a very sacred act for me. And so having that kind of integrity and that willingness to live our values is also a non-negotiable for me, which is not to say anybody else is the lesser for not having done that. But I will say, like, not everybody has the capacity. Some of us are really great at piano and like just think in the ways of music. Some of us are really great with math and think in the ways of math and can use that in our daily lives. And some of us are either really good at or really curious about or really compelled by living in spirit. And so that can express in many different ways. And for me, it has been about being very sober in the face of the mystery. And so death is the biggie, right? Yeah. Being willing to face metaphoric and also literal death is a really important practice for me, loving life and loving spirit that lets me be here. And that kind of open, sober, deeply willing exploration. That's a non-negotiable for me. I need that in partnerships. I need that in client relationships. I need that in the world. I don't have time for top level fluffy shit. Yeah.
That's why I get nervous.
Well, and I know that it can be a little like hard-lined. It's just that it's not because I'm like agitated and like want to like get hard on people. It's because it's like, this is good food. This is really good food. This nourishes me in many different ways. And so let's lay the table beautifully and come feast with me on the mystery, Mm-hmm. So I need other people who are like spiritual Epicureans, who are like willing to try shit.
Yeah. Let's go play.
Let's
exactly.
do it. Mm-hmm.
I love it. Thank you. Talk to me about creativity for you.
It's interesting because I don't really think of myself as a creative person in the sense that I have any particular artistic talent. But I would say that I do have an aesthetic. And I was just talking about this with the garden the other day with Ruben, because my husband, I think stresses a bit sometimes about like, I like things straight, square, and level. I like the classics, lavender, heirloom roses, heritage roses, things like that. But as I was kind of managing this very unruly area in my garden, I realized that my aesthetic, or what I like, is a sense of order balanced with the willfulness of plants. So, yeah. You know, like I like the plants to be able to be and express their plantness. And I like to kind of balance that out so that there's some cohesion for my eye and my body and the energy of that.
Space.
Yeah, I like that. And so I do that in my business a lot. I feel like my business has a certain aesthetic that is an expression of my creative self. So whether I'm writing or making podcasts or choosing imagery for my website, or even just like setting up a program like for Quest. Like my Quest is very different from my teachers. And it's a experiential piece that I have created. And it's improvisational because the people are going to have their own experience in it. So it is sort of like theater. It is sort of like, it's culinary journey. It's intellectual journey. It's all of these things come together, and that's my form of creativity. Is in everything that I do, I'm always looking at like what's going on the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual level, and what story is it telling, what myth is it enacting. And so I like to use my mythic imagination in how I move through the world, and that's my sort of creative bent. I know what I like, I know what I don't like, but I wouldn't say I'm a particularly creative person. I wouldn't say I'm a member of the creative class, or whatever, Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. You said, I know myth. You said myth.
Yeah. I like
what are your favorite myths? I know. Talk to me about the myths you love, because I've been in the audience when you've told story, and I always saw when you tell stories. So tell me, what are some of your favorite stories?
Well, the one that's giving me chills right now is, of course, the classic, the pre-patriarchal version of the myth of Demeter and Persephone. And the reason why it's still alive for me right now is, yes, I gave a talk at the Women's Health and Fitness Summit put on by Belly Fit, and it became a podcast called Learning to See in the Dark. And in it, I tell the Olympian version of the rape of Persephone. And then I talk about the story as it was before, in a more matrifocal society, before the patriarchal thunder gods came in. And in that, it's the myth of Demeter and Persephone. And a key aspect of it is the return. Persephone returns. In this last wilderness quest,
I've got chills all over.
Yeah,
I'm about to cry, and I don't
like
even know why.
At base camp, and suddenly I hear this sort of crashing through the woods, and this woman comes out who she's been to 2 retreats with me. She's worked with me for a long time, and she just like emerged and was like, Persephone returns. And I was like, because that was it. I was Demeter in the fucking snow, waiting for signs of life, going like, are they gonna be okay? Are they coming back? And I realized, oh, that's what I'm doing. I'm holding vigil because I love so much that they are undertaking this journey. So I didn't even know I was living that myth until she came out, and she
literally
said Persephone, goes, Persephone returns, and I just like fucking lost it. Oh. Because that's how I feel, like I'm coaxing forth people's remembrance of that strength that they have, and that innate knowledge. They do know how to face their fears. They do know how to emerge from the long dark night of the soul. They do. but somebody needs to hold vigil for them so they have something to come back for. And so that was a really beautiful reminder that I hadn't put words to. I hadn't seen myself in that way, but it was so nice to be reminded.
You got your own medicine in the quest that you.
I really was. I was living the myth of Demeter, and so I that'll be a very valuable one for me now as I'm at base camp doing my prayers and rituals, hoping for people to come back and saying their prayers for them. Yeah, it's a favorite. There are so many. I'm also very interested in dismemberment myths, of which there are many. Inanna, the myth of Inanna is one. It's too long to kind of tell the whole thing, but yeah, the idea of coming back, being shattered or being dismembered or, being cut into a million pieces, but being brought back into wholeness again. Which is like coming back into the fold, coming back into togetherness, coming back into the indigenous self, the self that remembers, who am I? What are my gifts? What is my contribution to the collective? How can I be a member of an ecosystem? How can I be a member of a collective without taking from you? That's the indigenous archetype. So the idea of coming back into wholeness is a beautiful metaphor that's really fascinating me. So I'm reading a lot of myths about that these days. And especially a lot of the Proto-Indo-European, very old myths with holy vulture myths and even just practices. They're not myths so much anymore. They're not told, but there are some living cultures that still practice, for instance, Tibetan sky burial, where the vultures come and charnel ground, right? The sacred ground is where the dead body is laid out, tied down to the ground, and the holy vultures come and they devour your loved one, and you see them fly up. And so that your loved one has gone to heaven and has been processed. One of the reasons why I'm fascinated with that one right now is because environmentally what's happening is the vultures aren't coming anymore. And so the bodies are rotting. Yeah. And so there's environmental changes that mean that these cultures and their myths, what does that mean for their cosmology if the holy vulture doesn't come to take their loved ones to the afterlife, right? Heartbreaking. And so I'm very interested in kind of resuscitating some of those myths and reading about them and understanding if there's anybody doing any theological work on that, because what does that mean when you if you think about, we live in Coast Salish territory, and so in a culture that remembers its place in the ecosystem, when every other natural being also has God within it, then if you walked out, pre-contact, you'd see eagle, you'd see raven, you'd see seal, you'd see, every kind of animal. And so you'd have multiple incidents of magical encounter before lunch, right?
Yes.
And so now if you don't see that anymore, how does that change your cosmology? Where are you then in your grand narrative when all the gods seem to be moving on or going somewhere else? I mean, that's you have Norse background. My husband does as well. And so, it's not an unusual thing to talk about the old gods and the new gods, right? Mm-hmm. And so what happens if the old gods die? And do we create
these new gods out of necessity because we can't see our old gods anymore?
Yeah. And so what does that do to your cosmology?
Yes.
Is that what we're seeing in the West? Woo,
Yeah.
So I have a lot of lamentation in me and grief about those kinds of things. And so I like to study and honor and think about, ruminate about those things. Maybe that's part of my creativity as well. I can't remember.
I know I think it is, because you stimulate it when you post. I'm like, oh, and now I need to research this. Thank you for taking me down that wormhole. You frequently goes the message. I'm like, thanks. There went half my day. But thank you.
Yeah, welcome
Thanks.
to my life. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Reading
thank
the
you.
internet.
I know.
I think I'm almost at the end.
I know, it's this, you get in these wormholes of what am I, and it's no accident. I'm like, this is speaking to me. This is medicine. What is there for me? What am I supposed to be hearing right now? And clearly Source guided me to read this. And wow, as soon as you started talking about that, the holy vultures aren't coming anymore. I was like, oh wow, where are the holy vultures not coming in all these other places. Like,
Yeah.
you know, such a symbol.
Yeah.
Because they've left a lot of places. And culturally, and I think, you know.
And there's a sense of bereftness that I have, even not being from, you know, a Siberian or Asian culture, but I feel bereft. So
what have we lost in
they
this?
must feel, exactly. It's like the awareness of absence becomes a different kind of lament, I think. Which I also find very bittersweet, because the idea of the potential for that kind of magic, I mean, it can be here, but we need to remember.
And so I may get on a soapbox here in a minute. So this is where I struggle too, when patriarchy, the rise of patriarchy, the Crusades, the Salem witch trials, how we saw complete annihilation of culture, our own land. And look, I can't even do this without feeling that, and the loss of all of that, and the, you know, and now now nature seems to almost, you know, like, how is she writing herself, and how is she, like, how will she correct it? And then I get a full download where she almost giggles at me and says, "Do you not think I have this? Really? I've been in control the whole time. I'm showing you places you need to go deeper." And so when I listen to that, I'm like, okay, but she's not going to let me sit in comfort there. Not at all. She's like, no, you're going to feel this, and you're going to ask others to feel it with you, because you're going to feel my pain. You're going to feel my rape, and you are going to correct. You are going to figure out what this looks like, and you're going to speak. So I can sink into that. But then you go, but the vultures leave, and I'm like, oh, the vultures can't. Like, what are you doing? What did we get? And so I sit in that, and then I go back into humanness, and I'm like, so how do I change it in the humanness? Like, so can we maybe chat a minute about this? Because I'm reconciling in myself right now around being this spiritual, you know, I live in spirit with you, we do this, and then I have to be in my human. So let's talk about coming back to being human. And you're doing, like, I look at you and I'm like, you're definitely a leader at doing this, living with ecosystem, you're choosing to do this. But then I think about the person living in an apartment in New York who's listening to this and goes, well, how do I do that? Or how, you know, and you know, and all I can do is say, stay in the medicine, because I really don't know how to tell them to move out to Montana.
Well, you know, and it's interesting you said, like, you're a person who needs nature every day. So one of my non-negotiables, I guess, would be mountains. You know, I like elevation, and I also like valleys and meadows and those kinds of things that come with mountains. But I don't live there. I need to get there kind of seasonally, or at least a couple times a year, but I actually do better in a deep immersive experience. And then I'm good for quite a long time. I'm kind of a camel that way. You can, like, hold things and sustain. Yeah, exactly. So I actually think a person living in Brooklyn or something like that can also just be fine. So there's a few different things that I would say, like, a person who wants to remember where they are. Well, as you said, there's nobody said you get to feel good while you're doing that. And so one of the things that I believe is we do need to get better and more resilient at feeling discomfort. And that grief and rage are two very powerful forms of love, because grief is saying something I love has been lost and I'm shattered, I'm devastated. And so being able to have that, to be able to name and feel and cope with that sorrow is a process that we require to become fully human, to become so human that we can love beyond boundaries we ever thought we could. And then rage is saying something I love so deeply has been violated and I won't fucking abide this anymore. So it's another form of love that moves towards fierce protection of life. And that kind of love I'm totally showing up for, you know?
Yeah, I'm with you. Let's play. Yeah.
So I think people can do that work from anywhere. You know, being able to name and feel and bear the sort of dark or negative or more shadowy emotions is the beginning of the underworld journey.
Yes.
And the thing is, people think it's the journey to the underworld that's the hardest part, and it's not. It's the return and surviving the return. And that can be done by learning how to be a good witness and allowing yourself to be witnessed. And not in performance, not in centering the self or whatever, but in a very conscious, deliberate kind of way, where you really are constantly like, am I showing up? Am I bringing my gifts back to my people? Am I taking something of the spiritual realm or experience that I had, something of the mountain, and bringing it into my mundane everyday life? The only way you know that is if other people tell you they see it. That's what I believe. If it goes unwitnessed, it's too easy to question, did that happen? And that's why, we don't have in the Western culture a tradition of witnessing and being a good elder that lets young people know, yes, you have been initiated. And so as a young person, you cross these thresholds, and then at some point in your like 20s or 30s, you're like, am I an adult yet? Because I keep trying to initiate myself. I'm getting more credentials, or I've gotten married, or I've got a baby, or I'm doing all these things to try to say, am I good? Am I valued?
Where's my rite of passage?
Yeah, where's my rite of passage? Who am I? Do you see my gifts? Right? So if we don't get that, then we're constantly looking outwards for those things. So I think, I've never felt so alone.
Okay, awesome. I love it what you're saying right now, because when I look at my clients and stuff I'm diving into, there's a ton of stuff I'm working with women around this need for acknowledgement, this need for recognition, this need to be seen, the constant social media clamor that we're immersed in. And so it's so funny being witnessed. I'm like, we use social media to be witnessed now. Hey, I did this great post. Did you see it? So instead of just going, hey,
exactly,
oh
but
God,
without the somatic, without us
yes.
crying together, without us, because something does happen neurobiologically. Something happens at the level of our nervous system, where when we kind of get into a resonance with each other, our body now has a felt sense. It has a cellular memory of this actually did happen.
Yes.
That does not get activated through a click or watching a video or whatever. We may have an emotional response, but our mirror neurons are not firing through this, right? Through this mediated social kind of platform. So that's what I mean by eldering and circling. We do need to be witnessed. We need to learn how to be really good at that, because actually there's a lot of really shitty witness out there. That's like kind of self-centered, so it is like kind of a skill and an art that somebody needs to model for you, and you kind of have to apprentice to that. So it was interesting because when it came time to share our quest stories and then do the mirroring after everybody returned from solo, these are people that are very dedicated to spiritual practice. They've read really widely. Like some of them are like self-help junkies. Others are kind of more like hermit on the hill, like just doing their own practice in a way. But I think each was a little nervous about like, am I going to be a good witness? And, I gave some parameters and guidelines, but I said, you know what, don't worry, I'm going to model it. And I'm also going to model that I'm very human. I definitely say things that are not appropriate for there, but I'm getting better. And after just like one, people were like, oh, that's what we're aiming for. And so you do have to apprentice to that. Yes. So in anybody's spiritual life, I always think, this is kind of going back to my Stoic philosophy study, but, on the spiritual path, we need to have study, research. We need to have a practice. We need to have a guide or mentor, and we need community. Most of us have a lot of study and some practice that comes and goes. We may have a guide, but often it's very results oriented as opposed to just like witnessing and processing and modeling, like here's how you have a spiritual life. Very few of us actually have community. So that's why people would come to my office and see me, or they'd come for the 5-day retreats. And I just started to feel like it was just a little too easy and a little too comfortable. You do have to have some sacrifice to get to a place of real intimacy. And in those 4 days, we create those 4 pillars. We learn how to be good guides to each other and good community for each other. And then we take that back to our people. whether our people is our partner or our child or our clients or whatever. That's, you know, your quest is not for you. It's for your community.
Everything you do isn't for you. I like,
Right.
like this, and I, you know, you are not put here just for you. And I got that message at a very young age, which is really hard.
Yeah.
For someone
as a healthy narcissistic child. We try to grow out of it in our 20s.
Growing up on a horse ranch, growing up immersed, how you live. Like I lived with the land. At a very young age, I was skinning deer. So living that life and understanding all of that. And so coming from that nature, but still somehow developing this very narcissistic nature. Like it's going to come on. It's just going to be there. And then going, I abandoned all this for a while.
Yeah, just for a while, just to remember.
And then all of a sudden come back.
The most important thing, though, is that other people hear your story and they mirror it back to make sure they got you, but also they're going to carry your journey for you when you can't carry it anymore. Because you're going to forget again and again and again who you are, what your gifts are, how you're going to contribute. But if you've been witnessed by good witnesses, they will recognize when you're forgetting. They will tell you when you are forgetting. They'll tell you what you are forgetting, right? So we need to do that for each other. And
there's a book there. Oh my God.
Yeah, I got no time for books.
You got no time.
I want,
oh my God.
I want the thing.
You want the experience.
Yeah, I want the experience because I want people to have a muscle memory of what it feels like to be really seen, when you've been just like brought back to your bare bones, when you are your skeletal self, without the armoring, without the posturing, you know, when you are just down to that pure essence of you, and then you're willing to be seen, that's who they remember. And that's what they carry.
Isn't that what we're all seeking? Like, I think that's what we're all seeking. Like, because that's the thing. We all want to be seen, heard, and understood. Mm-hmm. And so, can you see me in all of my hot messness? Yeah. Just this complete.
Yeah. And why can't you feel seen even though there's a million eyes on you? A teacher I used to have, Stephen Jenkinson, talks about how food makes hunger. And that's very true in fasting, literally. It's like, if there's no food around, it's actually not that hard to fast. Most people don't get hungry until like day 3, day 4. Like you get a little bit at first, but there's so much else going on. Yeah. With no food and no daily life rhythm that's centering around food, you actually forget it for quite a bit of time. As soon as you start coming back to base camp on the morning of the 5th day, you're like, I'm so hungry and weak, even though you've been totally fine, right? Because you sense that food is coming, and then the yearning begins. And so all those eyes on you creates hunger. It creates yearning, not fulfillment, because we don't get the biological.
I'm getting such crazy download about the whole yearning piece right now. Mm-hmm. For everything. Yeah. It's not just about food.
Exactly.
Oh my God, this is about everything. Mm-hmm. This is about yearning for a relationship, yearning for sex, yearning for like everything.
Yeah, a little bit of it. Yeah. Without being witnessed, without being fully seen, makes you hunger. It's like touch hunger, skin hunger. It's like, it's a very real hunger because you know that it's like not quite catching, right? It's like, I have this much contact, but what I'm craving is this.
Why we feel lonely even though we're sitting here together.
Totally, right? Because if I don't have the skill of witnessing and I can't elder you through your rite of passage.
So how do we do this in our marriages?
Oh God. Well, first of all, Ruben and I had to realize that actually patriarchy does play a role in our marriage, and no therapist had ever brought it up. That's like fucking righteous indignation right there.
Yes.
How do we do it in our marriages? I mean, personally, I would say failingly, we kind of muddle through the best we can. Ruben and I actually separated for a short period of time because I had this realization that as a person who's very committed to spirit and very engaged in the spiritual path, I'm kind of used to either needing to like hide that or diminish that or keep it on the down low because our culture really likes to scorn people that make spirit a priority in their lives.
Or burn them.
Yeah, or burn them. Exactly. I have a lot of trauma from the burning times.
Yeah.
But what we also tend to do is, again, we have this capacity. And so it's like we unconsciously carry other people's karma for them. Like, oh, my husband's not very spiritual, but I do all this work and I kind of understand the dynamics. And so he doesn't need to. But what I realized is that spirit is my sweetest relationship. And Ruben has come to know that, like, it is a higher priority than my marriage in that sense. I recognize that my marriage is an opportunity for me to become more intimate with spirit and walk my path in a greater way, but spirit comes first, and Ruben knows that, and so it's kind of hard to always play second fiddle. But one thing I realized is that if I tolerated that kind of like, I'm just not a spiritual person kind of stuff, then whatever we were working on in our marriage was like, we were going to get, again, like, we'll get here, but we'll never get here, because I'm carrying his spiritual karma for him. And what I'm also doing is I'm becoming the impediment to him having the sweetest sense of intimacy he could ever know. If he doesn't know that with spirit, how will he be able to know that with me? It will always be at kind of like a superficial level, or at least an incomplete level. And so I kind of said to him, like, if you aren't really actively engaged in understanding what your sacred task is in this lifetime, beyond me or work or whatever, your sacred task for your soul, your gifts and how you bring them forward, then I realize that I'm the one holding you up, because I can't do that work for you. So we need to split, because you need to do that work. Maybe we come back together, maybe we don't. And he was like, I am willing to do whatever. And that's when he started to proceed as though perhaps gardening is a spiritual practice, and perhaps that of God is in the tomatoes, and perhaps,
yes,
that, you know what I mean? And so once he started to kind of go, well, 99% of the world feels like we've kind of got that figured out, and the 1% we don't know, that's the water in which Carmen swims. I'm willing to dip my toe in that water, and now he's like dived in. So in our marriage, I needed for us to both recognize the sacred and spiritual work of what we're doing. And so that adds a different dimension when we talk about our different attachment styles. I'm avoidant, he's anxious. When we talk about our abandonment wounds, when we talk about trauma, when we talk about how patriarchy is showing up, and my internalized misogyny says fucking brutal shit to him sometimes, like, grow up hair. So, oh my God, fucking hell, why would I say that? Internalized misogyny, right? Like,
yes,
be tough, don't have emotions, don't, why? Because I'm avoidant. So that makes me feel like a failure as a woman if my husband isn't happy. And the other thing too, and this happens in spirituality, I think unconsciously, is there is something about women being a conduit or a vessel for the mystery. And I don't want to be biologically determinist, but the fact that we can bleed every month and not die, we can bring forth other humans, male and female, and we can provide food for them. We obviously know something about the mystery of transformation. And so it makes sense that women, biological women, I'm going to say it, do have a role in the conveying of the mystery to the world. There's something inherent in the way our species perpetuates itself, where there is a special role for women. And it's not everything, and it's not all of culture, and I don't want to perpetuate the genderism that comes with it. However, if our man is unhappy or doesn't have a spiritual inclination, we often take it on as a personal failure. And so we get angry if they're having, either spiritual denial or spiritual crisis. It's like we respond with defensiveness.
Yes.
It's like, but it's my job to make you a spiritual person, and if you can't just figure it out, or if then I'm ashamed.
I have clients that go like, my husband's not on my journey with me.
Mm-hmm.
And, my common answer is, does he have to be? Will you still go?
Right.
And see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And what if he, and I'll just be honest, my husband isn't on that journey with me.
Mm-hmm.
And
which I should also say, my husband supports my journey, but doesn't share my journey
yes,
either.
Yeah.
Right?
So exactly. So I've always had this. Do you know how you talked about you were just holding the space for them while they were out?
Yeah.
And so maybe I've created this, but that's how I see him. He is this pillar that can hold the ground for me while I leave.
Mm-hmm. Which is a certain
Yes.
role, right?
Yes. So, and he doesn't hinder me.
Right.
He allows me to go do it.
But
And
it's not going to be enough for his soul.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
You're right.
And
Yeah,
so at
like,
some point you're going to be
it's
like, you know, I can't help you, dude. You got to do your own thing. And I'm not saying.
And we have had that
wrong,
dark
but
night. We've had those conversations, and I've emailed you for therapist names, and
Yeah.
and like, it's how do we get, like, because I don't know how to do it, and I do get you, like, here, but getting here, and we have had here.
Mhm.
There's those moments.
Well, and
But-
I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that we all have our cycles,
Mhm.
and we each move through the seasons again and again and again. And so
Yes.
we recognize them. We recognize the ones we're just skimming over.
Yeah.
We recognize the places where we're stuck.
Yeah.
And it may not be a crisis for him, but if you see the pattern and you see the cycle, at some point that's going to be a crisis for you. Because you'll be like, I can't walk this path for you, but I can fucking see it. And it's like, I'm sick of, you know what I mean? Like, you just won't be able to, because you want for him to become fully human.
Yes.
None of us can stand to see people miss out on the sweetness of connection and the sweetness of grief. So, yeah, it is interesting. Like, often in, I think you're going to ask me about like feminine leadership, but I want to kind of segue.
I don't even care about that at this point.
So often in the Western culture anyway, we like to talk about, you know, like masculine and feminine, or like yin and yang, right?
Yep.
Like yin really receptive, yang really active principle. And so we often associate the feminine with the yin and the masculine with the yang. Of course, that's not universal, right? That's not how energy works. That's just a way that we understand it. But you can flip that too. And in the Hindu traditions, you know, if you talk about Shakti and Shiva, so Shakti energy, the female embodiment, she's the social butterfly. She's the one going out there networking. She's like making shit happen. She's creating, she's destroying. She's like, hey, saying, hey, you two need to connect. And like, this is how things need to work, right? She's like really activated and engaged and gets agitated.
Shiva's just shit sitting there.
He is the throne upon which Shakti can sit, right?
Yes.
So he is the mountain. He is strong, silent type. And Shakti comes back from making shit happen out there, and first she gets to rest. And so Shiva holds her and holds space for her, and then he gets her off so she can relax. And then it's time for Shiva, right? And then it's his time, and she brings him to life. So it's a reversal, the concept of it. And I really appreciate that, because both are active in everyone. And so, you know, there are men who have the ability to initiate women into the mystery, for sure. But it's different. I agree with you.
It's way different.
and so if you're in a hetero partnership and you're a woman who is really interested in being initiated into the mystery, and you undertake that and you do that for others, and you see your man stagnant or overcompensating or wounded and reluctant and resistant, pardon me, and then at some point Shiva isn't going to cut it anymore, right? At some point it's just like, no, you need movement. We need to get this going. And you know, Shakti, as both a creator and destroyer of worlds, is at some point she does become unafraid of just burning that shit down because he needs it.
Yes.
And she does this in sacred service, right? Fierce protection of life means you can't stay there clammed up and not fully human. And so sometimes that means endings of things or rebirth of things, or, you know, restructuring of things. But I do think that's really important. Also, rite of passage for women. One thing is becoming divergent from roles or teachers or the mother or expectations or whatever. That's one. But another one is modeling the willingness to go into the underworld and return. Like, prove it, you know, do the work. And then it's compassion, to suffer with. And now I will walk with you. I will hold your hand to the entrance of the underworld, and I will hold vigil for you until you come back. And then let them do it. And we do that with our kids. We do that with our kids. Sometimes we have to do that with our husbands. That's my belief.
Yes.
Like me.
Yes. And I don't know that we have the recipe, and that might be a whole day of conversation. Maybe that's a program. That's something. I'll deal with that in the hut.
Yeah. Yeah.
So back to women a little bit.
Okay. Yep.
So how do you think we as women can overcome the divide that exists in women when we come into sisterhood? Patriarchy's taught us to battle each other so that while we're battling, we can't take over the world. Patriarchy stays in its form that it is now. And so how can we come together? It's kind of probably, preaching to the choir, so to speak, but I still think that there's layers that we're not getting to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's funny.
Because I still witness the jealousy. I still witness the triggering. Mm-hmm. And all for us. Yes, I'm triggered. It's for me. There's a medicine here for me. It's all for me. I recognize that. But when the fuck is the trigger going to be gone? Like how can we get into right relationship with each other? Or what is right relationship?
I'll be honest with you. I don't think I'm a good person to answer that question.
Okay.
Because not that I haven't had like shitty things happen with women. Totally, I have.
Yeah.
And I've definitely had sense of inferiority or like a sense of needing to prove my worth or value.
Yep.
I've also had tons of people like projection onto me. But honestly, I just, in my DNA, I just have never had much time for that shit. Somebody asked me a question in an interview once about like how you deal with, insecurity or jealousy or something. And I was just like, totally kind of like, I didn't have anything to say. And I think finally in the end, I was like, I just don't hang out with fucking insecure people. And so it's not like I don't have compassion for that particular kind of wound. It's just that my sort of code of ethics has always been, is that a very sisterly thing to do?
Perfect.
Should I be with that man who has a partner? No, because it's not fucking sisterly. Yes. Do my needs matter? No, because it's not fucking sisterly.
Yes.
So I try to do that. Now I recognize that what I think is sisterly behavior, somebody else might think, there's no kind of moral or ethical right or wrong. But because I've always had that in my head, and it isn't because I've always had like a bunch of close friends. Like I have a friend who has like, she'll say, oh, me and my 10 best friends are going on a cruise. I'm like, I don't know fucking 10 people that I could ever go on a cruise with. I don't have a best friend. Like, I don't have that. So it's not because I'm so abundantly blessed in girlfriends or sisterhood. I'm not a total loner either. It's just that, I don't know. I can't answer it because it's just not the way I think. It's not
irrelevant.
And I think I see
which is a great answer.
And I'm like, that fucking sucks. And that's just what's happening. And I'm like, who am I to think that I can dismantle patriarchy within this sisterhood? Like I can't. Yeah. All I can do is sort of name it and be like, do you see that? Do we see that similarly? Great. Awesome. Let's let that go. I think like maybe, Charisse, I just have to come around to the notion that I'm kind of just pretty secure in myself. Yeah. So I just don't really think that much I don't read into things very much. And I've had seriously hurtful things happen in sisterhood recently, like in the last year and a half or 2 years, that really profoundly I felt so unseen, and it felt unfair, and it felt also just really heartbreaking because I had such a love for this person and just felt like, wow, this really breaks my heart that we can't sort of see eye to eye and we're not communicating in a way that we can both understand. It just felt like we were suddenly talking different languages, and there was so much wound, but we just couldn't navigate it. And I feel loss, real loss. But that's grief and that's love. That's not about security. That's not about tall poppy. That's not about, like, I get that feedback and I'm just like, yeah. It's about grief and loss and love and, maybe anger, maybe disappointment, but I just don't really, if I were to compare myself to anyone, it would be some mythical version of myself that is so much, it's like inhumanly perfect. So I wouldn't do that with some other person.
Oh.
Yeah.
Kid, actually, that was really deep. Like,
right.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
I'm way harder on myself than
Yeah.
I'd ever be on anyone else. And so,
I know, I remember being completely torn apart by a sister once in an email. And my only response back to her was, I'm really good at doing that for myself. I didn't need you to do it for me.
right.
I do it for myself all the time. So I think that your answer was still an amazing answer. It was still a great thing to ask you, because it was a beautiful perspective and how we can twist things and look at things differently. We're almost out of time. So what is my last question to you? Okay. When is the next Vision Quest?
It's in August. It's in late August. And I really want to go. And as you know, when you're doing these things, people they dance around the computer for a while, and they like maybe take a long time to decide. But if I don't have a minimum number, I can't
go
run it.
Yeah.
So I would love it if people don't wait till the very end, because the ones who have signed up or who are in the process really want to go too, right? But here's what I would say is, so like in marketing, we know patriarchy is kind of like go big, go home, like amplify your voice, blah, blah, blah. And that's just not been how I've worked in my business for the last while. And one of the things that I started doing almost 3 years ago now, actually, over 2.5 years ago, is I actually keep my subscriber list really small. And so if people don't open about 80% of the time, I usually give them about a year. And if they haven't opened like 8 out of the 10 emails that I send, then I just unsubscribe them and I delete them. And so that means that I have about an 80% open rate, which is like as good as, it's like unheard of in any industry. Like by many multiples, like 10%, that's pretty great. And so what that means is that I have a high level of trust with the people on my list. And so I know that there are impediments to people coming, like it's a 2-week thing, so it has to be like, this is my vacation this year. It's expensive, it's $39.95 Canadian plus GST. And there's like gear and stuff like that you have to gear up for. But I guess what I want people to know is that if you're putting this out, you're vouching for your people, basically. That's how I would put it. I'd be like, Charisse is vouching for these people. And so I always have people who have payment plans, who are like, I need to borrow stuff. I need to, there shouldn't be an impediment to coming for anyone who wants to come. So I kind of am like, if your reasons are financial or like gear related, that kind of stuff, all of these things can be worked out. But you need to give voice to your needs, which is often a threshold experience for people in and of itself. So the next quest is happening late August 2017. And then after that, I'm only going to do them once a year. And it's 8 people max, which is not very many. So if anybody's interested in coming, they should, reach out to me. Where can they find you? Well, you can go to my website, carmenspagnola.com. CarmenSpagnola. And on the Wilderness Quest page, there's like a link to email me. I'm actually thinking I'm going to put up just a little questionnaire there to kind of get a sense from people. That way I can contact them and get their email. But really it requires a conversation. Because my assumption, my expectation, my intention is that I am doing soul work with everybody that I work with, which is why it's hard to reach me. Because like if a person's not going to fill out the new client appointment form on my website, we're obviously not meant to do soul work. It's like too superficial for me. It's like, you know what I mean? And I always love that. Like when somebody, I always think it's like pretty amazing if somebody like fills out my form, but then they also find me on Facebook and message me and they're like, I really want to do it with you. I'm like, well done, I've been stalking you for months. I'm like, perfect. I enjoy it.
I love that. I know, that's what I want too. It's like, okay, you've read my stuff. We're clearly in this resonance space together.
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah, we need to know that it's like we kind of
Mhm.
know each other at some kind of soul level.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. And I'm just kind of the hub of the wheel, right? The other people in the group, if I have that with every single person, they obviously have some kind of soul work that is yet to be revealed, right? So they need to show up so they can see what that is. Otherwise, who knows how long this gets delayed, right? It's also always really fun to be like a walk-on character in somebody else's quest by being like, I went on this quest, and the next person is like, ooh, quest. And, we kind of pass it along.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who knows whose quest you have just been a walk-on character?
Exactly. Oh my gosh, who knows?
It.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see who comes along.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you.
Every conversation and moment I have with you is my medicine. And
This is
so
great.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much. And thank you for just being a fly on the wall to a conversation that I wanted to have. It's kind of like free therapy for me, to be truthful. Yeah. Love you so much. Love you guys so much. Take care, and I'll see you soon.